Hello and welcome back to Hank's Yarncast. My name is Casey. I'm the owner and operator of Hank's Yarn Parlour in Belfast. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. This week I'm going to get straight into finished objects because I am absolutely bursting to tell you guys about my finished jumper. As you can see, I have finished my iris pullover. Finally, this one is taken. It's been a bit of a saga as well. This is probably its third or fourth appearance in the podcast, but it's finally finished. I actually just pulled the blocking pins out of it this morning. So absolutely thrilled to bits with it. I'll stand up here so you can kind of see the fit in all its glory. I'm really thrilled that it has come out exactly how I was expecting it to. I know I shouldn't sound so surprised at that, but you know, sometimes when you fiddle with patterns, size-wise, gauge-wise, don't always come out quite how you thought they would. But this one is absolutely perfect. So you might recall from previous episodes, if you'd seen, that I had talked about I knit the first size in the body, but I did go up a size for the sleeves because I do have rather large upper arms. So just to make sure that it wouldn't be too clingy there, I picked up enough stitches for the second side of the sleeve and followed that chart size all the way down to the cuffs, and it fits perfectly. So I knitted this. I'll just remind you guys that it is primarily whole scarn, super soft and also noble. A little bit of a mix in there because it's just what I had in my stash, as well as the collar, cuffs, and the hem are all knit in Easter's Maryland, which I had left over from another project. So I've managed to complete an entire project out of stash wool, which I'm also just chuffed about. Stuff that had been languishing in my stash for quite a while. When the pattern came out, I just happened to have pretty much all the colors that she actually used in the pattern in the same whole scarn, or their super soft is what she uses in the pattern. So I either had those super soft or I had the equivalent in the noble. The noble's discontinued now, so that was a blend of 95% Geelong lamb's wool and 5% cashmere. But unfortunately, they stopped doing that one, I think 2 years ago. And the super soft is still going strong, so that one is a mix of Shetland and Merino, I believe it is, about a 50-50. Yeah, so this is it. It has bloomed beautifully. I don't know if you guys will be able to kind of see much of the texture of the yarn on this particular camera lens. I don't know if it'll focus any closer than this. Well, maybe it is. But I will also show, I think I've got one. I'll throw up a photo here of the pre-blocked state of this. So there's a really massive difference in, well, a lot of yarns, but in Holst particularly, they're super soft and they're noble. So Holst comes in a little cake, and it's actually got spinning wheel in it. So it's suitable for machine knitting as well, which is great. But a lot of people do find when they're knitting with it, they're like, oh, this seems really fine or really thin. But you kind of have to trust in the process. It will bloom beautifully if you wash it properly. So a little bit of a difference in blocking a whole scarn than how I would typically approach blocking a project. So normally I would do it in fairly cool, maybe lukewarm water with a little bit of wool wash. I like soak. That's what I carry in the shop here. And I like that because it doesn't have lanolin. If you like to keep the lanolin going on in your jumpers, that's fantastic. It does definitely have some beneficial properties if you're not allergic to it. I'm not, but I keep it in the shop because a lot of people are. But I also really love it because it is really tough on oil and grease marks, but it's actually a non-rinse formula. So it works really, really well for blocking super soft. So when I block the super soft, I put it in a basin. And actually, I'm going to point this out too, because Trin Annalee, who designed this wonderful pattern, which I already can't remember if I've said, if you haven't seen this before, this is the Iris by Trin Annalee. So in her pattern, she has this wonderful whole page where she explains how she blocks her holes so that it blooms properly, and it does actually soften up quite a bit. I think some people are a little bit disappointed with the name Super Soft when they get it, and it's not what most people would, I think, call super soft in its actual texture. It is actually a little bit of a rustic yarn, so the name is probably a little bit of a misnomer for most people, but if you wash and block it properly, it does bloom absolutely beautiful. So the trick is all the spinning oil has to come out of it. So you actually want to block this in a fairly hot wash with your wool wash. If you're really in a pinch, you could use some gentle dish soap like fairy liquid, because it's just breaking down the oil, and you will likely see if you put it in a basin, sink basin, or like a tub, wash tub kind of thing, the water will probably be really sort of murky and dark looking, and it'll probably look absolutely filthy by the time you're done with it. That's what you want to see, because that is all the oil coming out of the yarn. So you know it's blooming properly if you're getting that kind of murkiness coming out. It's not dye, it's spinning oil. I should admit, I was a little bit hesitant about blocking this one and leaving it to soak for too long, because I'm using the majority of the body of this background, so that is the whole snowball, but the collar and the cuffs and whatnot, those are all done in the e-sticker. The holes, even though it is that really pale kind of natural looking color, is actually a dyed shade, but the e-sticker is undyed. So I was just a little bit concerned that any excess dye that might run out of the darker blues and purple in the iris flowers here might bleed into that if I let it sit. So what I did was I took it upstairs to the bathtub and used we've got like a handheld shower extension over a bathtub that I just ran running water over it for about 5 minutes, like not a super long time. I just wanted to make sure that it was good and soaked, but that all the water was running away from it so that any dye that was coming out wasn't going to settle on the fabric. And after about 5 minutes of that, I was really satisfied that the dye wasn't going anywhere, which is a little bit of a surprise because I have knit with the blue and purple in a full jumper before and had experienced some dye, like not a lot, but I think just because an entire jumper was knit in that color, that there was a lot more dye in the water than, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, those two colors kind of make up the stem and the leaves and the flowers. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not actually that many rows of the knitting. There's not actually that much of that yarn in the garment. So it didn't bleed, didn't run at all, like into its neighboring colors. I can't see it running in there at all, which is fabulous. So once I was satisfied with that, I went ahead and let it soak. And obviously when I was using the hotter water, I was a little bit concerned that that might affect the dye as well. So I did just keep an eye on it for a few minutes, but no issues with the dyes running, thankfully. And I just let it soak for about an hour in that nice hot water until the water had cooled down. I did give it a bit of a rinse, even though the soak is a no rinse formula. I just wanted to make sure that all of that oil was kind of washed away and there wasn't going to be any residue left sitting there. So I did give it just a super quick rinse, again, just under the running tap again, and then laid it out to block it. And yeah, it's just lovely. It's much fluffier now. Obviously with the blocking, any of the kind of tighter floats or whatnot have kind of settled down. Everything just looks really smooth. Nothing is bunchy, nothing scappy. And also because it's bloomed, you don't see as much of the darker threads kind of showing through that lighter background, which definitely when you're knitting with it, because it is finer, it kind of looks like you're going to be able to see all your floats behind it, but you do just kind of have to trust in that process. At least with this yarn, that it will bloom and it will look fabulous in the end. So I did learn something a little bit different on this jumper too. This has a 2x2 rib on the cuffs, collar, and hem. Normally I tend to be 1x1 rib girly. I really like being able to cast on or bind off with a tubular method that is just so polished looking for ribbing. So usually even if a pattern calls for anything other than 1x1 rib, I will almost always just be like, nah, 1x1 rib it is. But I do think that the 2x2, there's just something about it on this particular jumper that made me go, no, actually I think it needs the 2x2. So I went off in search of another method to bind off 2x2 rib in a tubular fashion that just gives you that that kind of sort of almost continuous edge. So it just looks like the ribbing kind of rolls right over the edge of the fabric rather than having that kind of defined line of where you would bind off or cast on with a method such as the long tail cast on, or maybe just like a standard bind off, or even if you're going to bind off in the ribbing pattern, you'll still kind of get that line. So anyway, I went off on a search to see if I could find a good method for tubular bind off of 2x2 ribbing. I have tried a few in the past, many of which just basically get you to, after you've finished the ribbing, go along and kind of change the orientation of your stitches so that you're going to swap every other kind of set of knit and purl. So you essentially change what's on your needles to be from a 2x2 rib into 1x1 rib. That's a bit of a faff, trying to reorient the order of all your stitches along. But also, and then essentially you're just doing, once you've got them all kind of swapped, then you're just doing a regular tubular sewn Italian bind off, whatever you want to call it. I have tried that method in the past with, I was not happy with the results at all. Everything just looked messy and crisscrossy. It didn't give you a continuous line at all. It was a lot of work, it was a lot of faff, and it just had poor results. So I kind of gave up on that, and that's really why every time a pattern calls for 2x2 ribbing now, I just kind of go back to 1x1, but decided we were going to stick it out with this one. So anyway, I did eventually find a video that changed the sort of the order of the steps for that bind off in a similar manner that I learned when I was grafting together my Creel Cowl, which I'll show you in a moment. So in the end, anyway, long story short, let's see if I can get that up a bit closer for you. I don't know if you can really see the edge. So it's not perfect. It still does have a little bit of a line. I find that the stitches kind of almost, they're all kind of leaning in one direction as you're going around binding them off. They're all just kind of pulling a little bit to that side. And I thought that might be a tension issue. So I was making sure that I was kind of pulling, like, for lack of a better term, kind of massaging my stitches as I was pulling them off the needle to make sure they were still sitting in straight columns, and that the tension that I had on the yarn as I was binding them off through other stitches wasn't pulling on it. It wasn't really pulling on it, but it is just kind of the nature that the yarn has to go in that direction to get to the next stitch in the round. So there is a little bit of a lean on it, but not too bad. And I still think it looks neater than a standard bind off, and it is nice and stretchy. So, and elastic. It hasn't flared out at all. it's holding its shape, but it doesn't feel like when I put any bit of this over my body, like try to get it over my head or whatever, to put my arms through it or my head through it or whatever, like it's all perfectly stretchy. It's not restrictive at all, which is kind of what I'm looking for, because I when I started learning how to bind up like this, I was always adding quite a bit of tension there that, you know, would only stretch so far, and then there was definitely a stop. So yeah, that was a really long way of saying I think I have finally found a method for 2x2 rib that I think I'll use a bit more and see if I can get a little bit more practice at it. Then I might bring 2x2 rib back into more of a regular rotation for my garments. I will put a link to that video below in the show notes in the description. So if you want to have a nosy at that and give it a try for yourself, definitely do. I thought the tutorial was easy to follow, and I appreciate that. I'm very sorry, I can't remember her name, but she puts the kind of step-by-step which stitch you go into kind of on the screen as well, so you can watch her do it, and at the same time you can pause the video and it's all written down. The steps are all right there, so you don't have to kind of refer to them in her description as well. So really thrilled with that. That, I suppose, will bring me to my next finished object, and that's my Creel Cowl. So this is a Solde-Teague pattern, and there was a little bit of a drama. I had made a little bit of an oops down here at the beginning of this herringbone section. Got to about here, up where the next sort of B stitch of brioche is, and just decided that I couldn't live with that mistake anymore. It was driving me absolutely batty. So I ripped it back. What I did was I unpicked this section of garter away from the herringbone, so the first row of garter there. I unpicked it, put all my stitches on, so all those stitches from this half on a set of needles, stitches from this half on a set of needles, unpicked the row in between, ripped back the herringbone, reknit it properly by mistake, and then grafted it back together. And that graft was a little bit of a challenge. I had to learn something new for that too, because I had only ever grafted 2 pieces of stockinette together with Kitchener stitch. And grafting garter is just a little bit different, because you kind of got to think about, when you're grafting 2 pieces of stockinette, the Kitchener is mimicking the stitch pattern of the stockinette. So the sequence that you would use for that in terms of, so your Kitchener is usually kind of, you knit 1, slip it off, then go to the next stitch purlwise, but it stays on. Then you go to the back needle, purlwise 1 off, knit stitch 1 on. So pretty easy, but it's a slightly different sequence. Don't ask me what it is right now, because off the top of my head I cannot recall. I will pop a link to that video in the show notes as well if you would like to see how to graft garter stitch together. But it's worked really well. Like, I don't think you can even tell where I took it apart. There's no more mistake in it. So yeah, chuffed with that. So I knit this one in Balramu's Wood No DK. That is the newest yarn here at Hanks, and it is a 3rd Blueface Leicester, a 3rd Massam, and a 3rd Merino, which is just the loveliest combination, and especially in this brioche stitch, it's so squashy. Oh my god. Just like bringing a lot of sensory joy. I really like the shape of this cowl as well. I'll just pop it on here. So I really appreciate that, first of all, it is large enough to cover like my whole torso. So works really well if you've got, like, I've got a really lovely kind of like tweed sort of wool coat that has a deep V in the front of it. So, I mean, as lovely as it is, and it's heavy everywhere else, it's like your whole chest is exposed, basically. So it is absolutely dying for a really lovely squishy scarf or cowl to just tuck under that, and it has been perfect for that for the last few weeks, although the weather is finally starting to get warmer here, which is great. I'm excited to bring springtime knits out too. I can't wait. Probably next podcast I will have to show you guys all of my tees and tank tops sort of things, but for now, we are. So yeah, I like that it's got plenty of fabric here too, that you can just make sure that it's nice and tucked in around here. I really hate it when you knit a cowl that's just round and it just wants to like flop forward and sit up here, and it's like, okay, we're still exposed here, and yeah, just all the braids, like what is even the point? I mean, it's cute, it looks nice, but it's not very functional that way. So I do like that it has all this extra fabric in here, and I apologize, all this extra fabric is probably rubbing against the microphone as well. So sorry if you can hear a lot of wrestling, rummaging noises. Anyway, yeah, really, really thrilled with how this came out. I love the colors. I love how squishy it is. It was an absolute joy to knit with. The yarn held up really well to being abused, for lack of a better term, the number of times that I had to rip back that herringbone section when I went back to reknit it. It definitely needed a few tries before I finally got it right. That is not a comment on the pattern, by the way. It's just my inability to read a pattern and to count. I'm sure we've all been there. But yeah, if you've ever knit a Yusola Teague pattern, you'll know her attention to detail is impeccable, and her patterns are super easy to follow. They're well laid out on page. The chart for the herringbone section on this was a little bit of an eyeful. I do have to admit that. There's like every single square has a symbol in it. So it was a little bit overwhelming to read, but I printed off the chart, got my highlighter out, and kind of highlighted all the rows so it's kind of like every fourth row, I think, that you're doing kind of like an increase or a decrease to make these kind of little stems off the herringbone kind of lean one way or another. So I just kind of highlighted the rows that I really needed to get that information from, so that it'd be easier for me to keep track of where it was. And that worked. So that's what I needed to do. It worked great. Yeah, I don't know. I've gushed about this quite a bit already on the other podcasts and all my social media, so you guys are probably sick of hearing about it. But yeah, it was a very fun knit. Like in the end, I really appreciate that it has kind of these challenging sections, and then also a bit of garter when you feel like, okay, that was a big challenge. I need a little bit of a break now to shower my head before I start the next one. And each texture is just lovely. It's really fun. You're probably not getting the full benefit of it all the way back here in the camera, but maybe if I hold that a little, I don't know if that's focusing or not. I hope it is. Hopefully you can see that. I think this texture in the middle is probably my favorite. It's sort of like, it's very reminiscent to me of seed stitch, which is one of my favorite one color knitting textures. Absolutely love seed stitch. Real big sucker for it. So yeah, thrilled to bits with my Creel Cowl. And really glad that I did bother to go back and fix that. That it was worth fixing it, even though it was a little bit of a faff. It was absolutely worth it. So that's all I have finished subject-wise. I have been knitting like an absolute madman to get this jumper finished. I do have one whip, however, that I'd like to share with you guys. And that is, I started the baby blanket. So I mentioned last time that an acquaintance of mine down the pub had helped me out, and he has a grandson coming, and he asked would I knit him a baby blanket. So I had kind of put out a bit of a shout out on that episode if you had any baby blanket patterns, if you could let me know what your favorites were, because I was having a hard time picking one. So if you did send me a suggestion for a pattern, thank you so much. I did get quite a few. I looked at all of them. And eventually settled on this one. So this is called Tiny Kisses. I'm totally blanking on the designer right now. I apologize, but as always, I will throw up a photo here. So sorry, guys. I think this is just, there's a bit of focusing issue going on the camera now. Technology. So it was Janet who actually came into the shop with this really lovely baby blanket to show me. And as soon as I saw it, I just knew. I was like, that's the one. That's the one I needed. It's got sort of this like waffly texture to it, but it's actually like mostly stockinette, and then there's kind of like it's actually technically, I suppose, it's maybe a broken rib, but there's like one row of rib and the rest of it is just kind of stockinette. Anyway, so there was also a caveat about the blanket that he wanted the baby's name appearing on the blanket in some form or another. So what I've done, if I hold this up, so the baby's name is Beau. Hopefully you can make out, I've got a B so far. Yeah, so I've just done that in relief. So the letters I'm going to do in reverse stockinette, I've actually just started the E as well, but you probably can't see it. There's probably not enough. It's right up against the needle, so you probably can't see where the E is starting, but that's okay. So basically what I did is just in the center of the Tiny Kisses pattern, I just kind of sectioned off where would just be, that I wouldn't do that pattern, that it would just be stockinette in the center with reverse stockinette for the letters. So it took a little bit of maths, had to work out how big I kind of wanted the name. So I basically got to about here. So I had knitted about 4 or 5 inches across. So it started, sorry, it's actually knit in that direction. That's kind of the side edge is the bottom edge as you're knitting it. So once I had knitted enough that I could get a handle on what the gauge was going to be like, then I could do the math to section out a third kind of in the middle, because I kind of had to think about, well, how long, so the baby's name is Beau, it's 4 letters, how much space are those going to take up? Yeah. And then we had to get on a bit of maths, and then we had to also decide, well, what are the letters going to look like? Like what sort of, it seems weird to say font in terms of knitting pattern, but for want of a better word, what sort of font are the letters going to be in? So what I actually did was I went onto the Canva app, which I use for a lot of my social media things. It's just kind of quick and easy way to make graphics online. So I popped in the baby's name to a text box, tried out a few different fonts, and tried to look for one that had kind of nice round letters that would be appropriate for a child and that wouldn't be, you know, terribly difficult to translate into knitting. And when I was kind of satisfied with what I had, I downloaded that images of the text as a PNG. And then I popped that PNG into the Stitch Fiddle app. So if you're not familiar with Stitch Fiddle, you can use it to convert images into knitting charts. I think a lot of people mostly would use it for stranded projects. And there's a free version and there's a paid version that have different kind of features and whatnot. You can kind of tweak a lot more in the paid version, but I just use the free one. Pop the image in there and you can tell Stitch Fiddle, okay, this is how many stitches wide this needs to be. And you can give it you can put in your gauge. So I could tell it, listen, I have a gauge of 21 stitches to 4 inches by 32 rows. And it will calculate then your image. It will make a calculation and spit a knitting chart back out at you. So you've got kind of that graph paper of this is where you need to put all those stitches based on your gauge. So that gave me a pretty good starting point to work off of. It did take a little bit of tweaking. I think it would have worked really perfectly for a stranded chart that way, but what I didn't really anticipate was the way that when you change, I don't even know if you can see it on here, but when you change, this is upside down now, when you change from stockinette to reverse stockinette, you end up with kind of like a ridge. But the trouble is that when you switch back, you end up with another ridge. And you would think that it would always be that one would sit proud of the other, but actually it doesn't work that way. So I've kind of got like the reverse stockinette on some of the more vertical edges are actually reading as the reverse stockinette sits proud, but on the horizontal edges, the regular stockinette sits proud, and because I'm knitting it sideways, it's making a little bit of an issue. Like it was kind of bunching up the letters, but I did give this a little bit of a steam block just to see how that would lay once it's blocked, and actually those ridges have kind of gone away a little bit. They're not quite so prominent, and they're not causing the fabric to sort of pull in and bunch around the letter quite so much. So I think that's going to work out okay. I think that this blanket's probably going to end up being square-ish. It will probably be about 36 by 36 by the time it's done. Superwash wanted something easy to take care of. It's not my favorite to knit with, is the only trouble. Feels nice enough in the hand. Like it's very soft, very, very soft. My kind of beef with superwash wool. So when they process this, they strip all the scales off of the wool fiber, which is kind of what makes your wool stick to itself. Sort of like Velcro. But because they remove all the scales in this, it won't stick to itself, which means it's actually fairly slippery. So my biggest issue with this is weaving in the ends, or any time that you have to introduce a new ball. So you can't splice superwash yarn because you need those scales to really grab onto each other. Sorry, I'm just going to fix the focus on the camera here. Hopefully that hasn't been totally out of focus for those last 2 minutes. So when you have to add in a new ball of yarn, you can't splice it. I am not a fan of using Russian joined or knots, magic knots, anything like that, because inevitably they come out or the knot will work itself to the front of the work. So yeah, not a fan, which means that the alternative is that you leave, 5 or 6 inch tail and weave in your ends at the end. So that's what we're doing. Because the superwash wool is so much slicker, though, that I find that it tends to the ends want to unweave themselves in. So little trick that I have for that is that I split the plies of the tail that's hanging out. It's DK weight, by the way, but it is a 4-ply structure, if I recall correctly, I think. Maybe it's 6. Oh, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's actually a 5-ply structure. That's interesting. Anyway, so you can split the plies of the yarn kind of like roughly in 2. And then what I would do is treat kind of each of those as a separate end to weave in and weave them in different directions. And that just means that any agitation against the fabric that might pull that tail in one way or another just means that it kind of has to work out from 2 directions before it'll start unraveling. So it's not my favorite solution. I really just kind of would prefer that the yarn just sticks to itself and stays put, and we don't have to do things like this, but it's just an extra little trick to make sure that you don't end up with things coming apart on you, because we don't need that. Yeah, I'm into my second ball, which is all the way down there on the floor. I'm in a stool and I'm really short, so that's a long way down. I'll grab it in a minute. But yeah, it's not going quickly, but I would say that it's going quicker than I expected. I always find knitting back and forth on big flat pieces of knitting like this just is a slog. I just find that it takes forever. It doesn't really grow really fast. I don't even so much mind that I have to purl some of it. Like, that's fine. The way that I knit, it doesn't take me much more effort to purl than it does to knit, but I just kind of find I don't know. It derails my groove somewhat from knitting in the round. But yeah, I don't know. It's knitting up quicker than I anticipated. So that's been a pleasant surprise. Like it's already about 12. No, it's probably about 10 inches wide thus far. So and it's about 36 inches long this way. So it'll be good. It'll be a decent sized blanket. I think by the time I'm finished, it'll probably be about 36 by 36, maybe 36 by 40. Just kind of wait and see how it all works out with the letters. Because I mean, I've done the math, but sometimes, even though you've done the math, things just visually, I might need to add a row here or there just to kind of maybe adjust the spacing between the letters or how thick the letters themselves are, and then to make sure that there's enough breathing room around the letters at each end. So there might be some slight, wiggle room in there in terms of how big the finished piece is going to be. It'll be roughly 36 by 36 in the end, maybe a little bit longer. But yeah, thrilled with it, as long as I can get over my preference for non-superwash yarn. But it does make sense. It does make sense in this instance. Definitely, anytime anybody comes in looking for yarn for a baby project, it's what I'd recommend. It's one of my favorites. It's super, super soft, perfect for baby, really easy care. This is also part of their eco collection, which means it's not full of a ton of gross superwash chemicals. Like some of them are really bad, and some of them, like this one, use much less harsh chemicals in the process of scouring the yarn and removing those scales. So we like this one. Excuse me. Okay, so that's all I've been knitting on for the past month since you saw me last. But I will get you caught up on just a little bit of shop news that I have, which I normally do at the beginning when I was just too excited to share my jumper reviews. So class-wise, next week, the 17th of April, is our brioche class. So if you would like to learn how to tackle things like this, we're not going to be making this cowl. We're going to be making a much simpler cowl that just involves kind of a stripe like this section here. Actually, I'll show you the section at the top because it's a bit bigger. So it's just going to give you a section like this, and this is reversible, so you get kind of the other colors more prominent on the other side. It's really fun and takes a little bit to get your head around the first couple of times, but I think if it's something you want to learn, you'll pick it up, and it just kind of opens up so many other patterns for you if you can work brioche. It's really lovely, lovely texture. It's got great squish to it, and it's stretchy, and it's not too heavy or too dense. It feels lovely. Like, even though it's quite there's a lot of yarn involved in brioche. Like, it does eat a lot of yarn, but it kind of is, it also traps a lot of air in there as well, which I think it contributes to the squishy texture. So brioche is on the 17th of April. I believe there's 1 or 2 spaces still available in that class. So that is from, I believe it's 7 till 9 p.m. in the evening next Wednesday. And the next class after that is going to be our Stripy Socks workshop. So that's coming up again. This is a cuff down afterthought heel sock workshop. So that's kind of like a calf length sock. You could also do an ankle sock. I know coming into the warmer weather, I definitely prefer to be knitting ankle socks right now. Obviously, they take a lot less time as well because you don't have to knit the whole leg. But so these socks are knit from the cuff down. Sorry, this is going to rattle because it's full of dried beans to weigh it down so it stays upright. But so it starts in the cuff down, and we're just going to kind of work in the round to do the whole tube of the sock. The afterthought heel method, actually this is an afterthought heel. For a second I thought it was a shorter one, but it's not. So the afterthought heel method involves just knitting the whole tube of the sock and then coming back and essentially cutting a little pull-in and unraveling one kind of row in one half of the sock where your heel goes, picking up those stitches, and then knitting the heel is actually the same shape as the toe of the sock. So if you can knit a heel, you can knit a toe, you can knit both. It's a really simple method for knitting socks, so you don't have to faff around with heel turns and gussets, which means you need to know where you're putting your heel ahead of time. This one you just knit a tube, and then you can come back and put the heel wherever you want it, wherever it needs to be to fit your foot. So yeah, this also, I show you a method to the helical method to achieve jobless stripes in the round. So that's just kind of an extra little bonus. If you'd prefer to just knit a one color sock and just keep it simple, absolutely by all means, that is totally fine as well. So for both of those classes, yarn is included, brioche is over one night, sock workshop is over 2 nights. That is May 21st and June 4th. So there's a fortnight in between the classes, gives you plenty of time to knit some more of the tube of your socks. So we'll start up here, knit away at the tube, and then when you come back for the second class, I will show you where and how to put the heel in, and then also to finish up with the toe. So that's always a super popular class. There are already a couple of spaces booked in it. So if you're interested in learning how to knit socks with me, don't delay. Do get onto that quickly. It always fills up. Other shop news. There's some new stitch markers in the shop. I am particularly, beans again. I'm particularly in love with these ones right now. These are a little funny, and some carrots. Again, I hope that's focusing. Yeah, super cute little stitch markers. So you can use these on your knitting or crochet. I just really apologize about the focusing today, guys. This is all over the show. So all of our stitch markers come with either a lobster clasp, which these ones are, or a D-ring clasp. So you can either clip them directly onto your stitches if you're crocheting, or if you just prefer doing that with your knitting or using them as a progress keeper. If you like to keep your stitch markers on your knitting needle, I would probably recommend going with the D-rings because they are much larger around, so they will fit up to an 8mm needle shaft comfortably. So they're not going to get stuck. They're just going to slide along as you're knitting. They won't get stuck where your needle meets the cable or anything like that. Yeah, I've got a few more. So I've got little cute pennies. These ones are some monstera leaves on the charms. And these ones have, so I always try to do, they're sets of 5. And I always try to make them, there's at least one of them has a different marker. So if you are using these for your knitting, you can use them to mark things like raglan increases, but one of them will always be different to denote the beginning of the round. If you're crocheting, I don't think that is such a big deal because, yeah, you probably won't have multiple markers. I mean, you might have them kind of where you might need to come back and add arms to an amigurumi figure or something like that to mark, but yeah, anyway. So these ones, the odd man out here has a jasper bead. Let me just see if I can try that focus again. There we go. So they're natural stone and glass beads. And I've also got these ones, which are a little bit different. These are silver tree of life, and these are made with agate beads. So the blue ones, these are blue agate. The beginning of the round marker, the different one is tree agate. And then I've also got, these ones are a little bit chunkier, these markers, but they are also friggin' adorable. These are little succulents in pots. I can get that to focus. And I'll just see if I can shimmy these around. You probably can't see them from this. I don't think my camera will focus any closer than that. Oh, maybe it will. Maybe it will. Let's try it. Might be a little bit too bright for it as well, but there are little tiny kitties in the bottom of these pots with the succulents in them. They're absolutely adorable. So big fan of those. Yeah, I love having new stitch markers in the shop when the seasons change. Just something about it. So if you like collecting stitch markers, pop down and grab yourself some of those before they're sold out. Most of our stitch markers, if they're just the charms, they go for about $5 for a pack. Any of the ones that have the natural stone beads in them are £6, so just a little bit more to help cover the cost of material difference there. The last thing is there's a new yarn festival coming to Northern Ireland. You may or may not have heard about this. I think they're actually just going to announce it. The podcast is coming out on Saturday. I think it should probably be announced by Saturday. So fingers crossed I'm not spilling the beans too early here. But there is a new yarn festival that is going to be held at Castle Espie on May the 17th and 18th, so it's a Saturday and a Sunday. It's called the Gathering Yarns Festival, I believe. So I hope I'm not telling this too early. There should be tickets available as of Saturday. If I get the link to that by the time this podcast goes up, there will be a link to it in the description below, so you can check out the details on that. So we're going to be vending up there for that weekend. So the shop will be closed that weekend in May. We'll be up there instead, so you can come visit us there. But there will be tons of other makers, fiber artists, and likewise related vendors up there. So I'm really looking forward to that. That is organized by the ladies at Inspiring Yarns, which I talk about all the time in this podcast. So if you're interested in that, I will have a link, hopefully, to tickets and details below. If it's not out by the Saturday when this podcast is out, do check my social media or check back again, because as soon as it's available, I'll add it to the description for sure. Yeah, I think that's everything that I had to talk to you guys about today. I'm really, really excited about that yarn festival. Really, really chuffed about my jumper and my cowl, and I can't wait for new classes coming up. So if you've enjoyed your time here with me, hopefully have. Hopefully this has either been entertaining or educational in some way. Don't forget to hit the like button and do subscribe if you'd like to get a notification of when the next episode comes out, which should be in about a month's time. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next time. Bye.